Everyone keeps telling ambitious women to be more productive. Wake up earlier, time block your calendar, buy a better planner. But what if productivity isn't actually the problem? Today, we're talking about why so many ambitious women feel like they have so much potential, but still struggle to consistently make progress on the things they care about most. Because maybe the question isn't, how do I become more productive? Maybe it's, why does it feel so hard to become the person I know I'm capable of being?
I feel like we were actually talking about this the other day, but I feel like we have been sold this idea of productivity on social media that's like, you wake up at 6 a.m., you do your vibration plate, then your red light mask, then you put your little performative eye patches under your eye, and then you do this and you have like all these things, right? And then it's like, that'll make it so that I'm so productive when I go to actually work and get things done. And it's just like actually not the case. I think that it's painted productivity in such a way that's just not true productivity. And that's one of the things we really want to talk about in today's episode is what does it mean to truly be productive? And I think that, I don't know, I just think like I feel like I've gotten kind of caught in that trap a little bit and just feeling like I have to do XYZ thing or feeling like I sit at my desk all day. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, what did I do to actually like move my business forward and make progress? And it's not a lack of ambition. It's not a lack of discipline or desire, but it's like, why are we all caught in that loop? And that's kind of what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, I think as an adult, I've had to learn that time sitting in front of your computer doesn't mean you are more productive. And that's an identity that I had to kind of let go of in my 20s. I remember back a couple of years ago when I was in the peak of like juggling a million different things. Because if you're listening to this episode, this is probably why you're clicking on a productivity type of episode. It's because, you have a full time job, but maybe you want to do something on the side. You're feeling pulled to something different, but you're like, how the heck am I ever going to have the time to be able to work on all of these different things? And that was the season of life that I was in a couple of years ago. And that was exactly how I felt. I, had my day job and then I was doing freelance work on the side and I was trying to become a content creator. And I would get to the end of the day and be like, I just sat on my computer for literally like 12 hours, but what did I actually get done? Like, I either still don't have a video to post for that day or I felt like I was in a million different tabs, but I didn't actually complete anything. And I remember because I used to, during this phase, I would work out after, I would go to the gym after work. And I remember always being at the gym just feeling like so anxious about the fact that like I didn't actually get anything done. And if you're listening to this episode, hopefully you can relate to that. But yeah, I think that that's something that I had to learn. It's like, regardless of whether you're sitting in front of your computer working on the thing that you want to do for 30 minutes or 4 hours, if you're working on the right things, that time actually isn't correlated with how productive you are. And that's what we want to talk about in today's episode. So I'm super excited for this. I think that this is such an important conversation. And we also want to make this kind of like a series on why ambitious women struggle with X, Y, and Z. Today, productivity is our topic, but there's so many other things that ambitious women struggle with. So if there's anything else that you guys want to hear us cover on this podcast for this series, definitely let us know on Spotify because we're super excited about it. But let's go into section one. This is we've confused being busy with being productive, which is exactly what I was just talking about. But we want to kind of like get into the weeds on why this actually happens because it's not necessarily that you're just, not focusing on the right things or your to-do list isn't good enough. It's literally like it's psychological. It's something happening inside of your brain. And it's the fact that your brain loves busy work because it gives us immediate proof that we're accomplishing something. I know for me, will sometimes struggle with getting something done on like a project that I want to do or something that I want to build or a side business that I want to start because it's going to take a lot of time, right? And that time spent day after day after day working on something when you're in a focus work block for a couple of hours and then you get to the end of that work block and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm still not going to see this result for months, maybe up to a year." That can be really hard and our brain doesn't love that. Our brain loves that immediate result. It's kind of like a dopamine hit. So that's why our brain loves busy work. So we get to this point where we feel like we're being productive, but we're actually just being busy and it's just ourselves trying to like fill our calendar with busy work for an 8-hour workday. And then that's why we get to the end of the day feeling like, what in the heck did I actually accomplish today?
I view when I think of like when I'm being productive versus when I'm just being busy, I think of productive as something that truly moves the needle and moves my business forward, or is something directly related to the revenue that I'm generating. Or it's like, okay, I want to hit this specific goal even though this does not necessarily generate me revenue right off the bat, this is like my clear first or second or third step. And it's funny because I mean, it's not funny, but funny. A few weeks ago, I think I mentioned on the podcast a while back, I was struggling with a lot of anxiety. I think I mentioned that in like our quarterly reset episode. And when I was super down bad with it, I was like not at my desk. I literally did not sit at my desk for like 3 weeks because I was just in the throes of anxiety, right? And I still got done things I needed to do. Like I still posted, I mean, not every day. I didn't post a video every single day, but I still posted enough to where I still was getting deals in. I was doing, whatever. Everything was taken care of. My emails were being answered. Life was continuing to turn. And I had to ask myself, I'm like, what the frick do I do at my computer? Like previously, before I was out with anxiety and I was like sitting at my desk for 8 hours a day, what was I doing? Because I was like, I don't necessarily like, yes, I would post more or, I don't know, I would write more consistently on LinkedIn or whatever, but I'm like, I was not drastically more productive than I was. I was busier when I sat at my desk for 8 hours, but then I had to ask myself, what was I truly doing? And I know I lose so much time to just like you said, clicking between tabs and, being like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do that. Instead of actually like finishing things to completion. Because it's like, especially if you have a job where you maybe are able to get a lot done in a short amount of time. Like even I know people who work in corporate where it's like, yeah, my entire task list that my boss gave me, I got it done before lunch. And now I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And it's like in our situation, if we're in that boat, it's like it feels better to sit at my desk all day and just like find something to do because it makes me feel busy and that makes me feel productive. But in reality, it's not actually moving the needle forward in any area of my life because it's essentially just busy work.
Yeah, and I also think that when we hear the term busy work, I think it's easy to be like, oh, that just means I'm like checking emails all day. But I think that in that category of busy work, it's also your day to day tasks. When you think of your day to day tasks, think of it like a circle. Like that's just keeping you exactly where you are. That's what you need to do to stay afloat with where you currently are. But if you're
Mhm.
listening to this episode, you're probably like, no, I actually want to move forward. I don't want to just be in that circle forever. I don't want to, just do my day job every single day for the rest of my life. I want to do something more and something greater. So, how are we going to get out of that trap of just that circle and like project ourselves forward? And I think that's the distinction between busy work and productive needle moving work. And I really do think that it's just a matter of setting up systems that allow you to do that busy work or day to day work faster so that you have more time for those focused work blocks of like needle moving, actually, pitching yourself or starting the business or creating the content or doing whatever you need to do to really step into that next level version of yourself.
Yeah, I think it's hard and can become a trap too because a lot of times the busy work feels it's like easier to check off a to-do list. I feel like it's more measurable. It's like, if I say, "Oh, I'm going to, go and like get my inbox to, inbox 0 or whatever." It's very measurable to sit there and be like, "Okay, I'm going to take the next hour and just go through all my emails and whatever." And then you feel really accomplished because you're like, "Okay, cool." And that is productive in a sense of like you need to be able to like, I don't know, understand what's in your inbox, if there are deals in there and whatever to then generate revenue in your business. But I think a lot of the things that are truly productive are the things that require you to be okay with delayed gratification. Or even, for example, when I'm working on, like I've been working on a new content series and it's productive because I've been sitting at my desk working through the scripts for the content series, but I don't get when I finish that script, there's no benefit. Like there's no like, I mean, the benefit is that I'm figuring it out, but there's no immediate, my gosh, this video now has 1 million views, whatever. It's like I have a script, great. But I had to sit there and be creative and think through it. But now I still have to go film it and edit it and whatever. And even when I go to film it and edit it, I still have to like post it and let the world decide what they're going to do with it. Like and that is it's a slower process. And I think that is also part of the reason why we try to just like stay busy because that productive work can sometimes feel slower too.
Every completed task gives your brain a small dopamine reward. So dopamine is that it's kind of like that feel good chemical, right? You clear your inbox to 0 and you're like, wow, that feels so good. You get a little hit of dopamine. But when you are doing these needle moving tasks, like you just said, they are kind of thankless in the short term. Even when you go post that video, you're going to post that video and then you're going to feel exactly the same. You're not going to feel better. You're not going to have that kind of like dopamine hit for the most part because nothing in your life is going to change when you post that one. I mean, unless obviously it goes mega viral and it changes your life
Which we
overnight.
hope.
But like, right. But like for the most part, that's not happening, right? So I think that we can get caught up in these kind of like, okay, let's just clear the email inbox and do that because I actually want to see that dopamine hit. But we just need to remember that, the needle moving things, even though they're going to feel thankless in the short term, those are the things that really build momentum in the long term, which at the end of the day, you're going to get much more dopamine for in the long run. So let's move on to section two, which is that the real problem isn't productivity, it's actually identity. And I love this so much. I think that this is such an important conversation because I feel like when we try to get started on something, it's going to take naturally not only a lot of discipline, but a lot of like focus, a lot of those like really deep work blocks where you're spending hours and hours and hours on something and you are truly like really invested in it and you really love it. And I think when we have an identity problem around like, we don't believe that we are the type of person that has that thing, I think it's really hard to get into those focused work blocks to actually build the thing that you're trying to build. I listened to a podcast a couple of months ago at this point, and the girl, she was like super successful already, but she's never written a book. And she said that it was her goal to be a published author. So she wanted to start writing a book. And she was like, I couldn't figure out why I was having so much friction around just sitting down and like writing for a couple of hours. And she was like, I realized that it was actually because I didn't have the identity of an author. I don't see myself as an author. So for me to sit down and spend all of that time writing a book, it's really challenging because your brain doesn't want you to spend all of this time and all of this energy on something that it doesn't think that you are. So getting into that identity of like really being the thing that you are trying to work on, I think is a really underrated tip.
I feel like when you lack that identity too as who you're trying to become, I think that's when a lot of those thoughts of doubt also come up. And it's like, well, I'm not there yet. So how do I know that this is the right first step? How do I know that what I'm actually working on is what I should be working on? Because you're like, I remember when I started my freelance marketing business and I had no marketing experience. I had no experience of starting a business. I didn't know anyone in my personal life that had started a business. So I was sitting there being like, I'm literally a college grad with an unrelated degree. I'm like 22 years old and I have no idea what I'm doing. How do I know that anything I'm doing is actually what I should be doing or moving my business forward? Because I'm not a business owner. I don't do that. I don't know how things should evolve here. But I feel like I remember back then I had to just take the mindset of like, if I'm doing something productive, like if I were to make a list of like, okay, here are all the things that I think could actually move the needle. Here are the things that I think could be productive that could move the business forward. And I pick one and I say, okay, I'm gonna try to do that and move forward with it and see if it does anything. That is productive. That's productive to work to take one thing that you think might move the needle in whatever you're working on and to go forward with it and to say, okay, I'm just going to think like a business owner, think like an entrepreneur and do, pick something and just do instead of sitting here thinking I'm just going to do. I think that helped me a lot with then kind of building that identity as I was working on the thing that I was working on.
Yeah, and I think that something that's been really helpful for me over the last couple of years is just like building the proof that working on anything is going to be much more productive than just like sitting and waiting for you to figure out the right thing to be working on. And what I mean by that is if you spend, let's say, 6 months working on something, which I have spent way longer than 6 months working on something that didn't end up being anything. Just to put that into perspective. But if you spend, let's say, 6 months working on something and then you end up not going anywhere with that thing, let's say it's like a business or content creation or a YouTube channel or a podcast, even if you decide to not move forward with the thing, those are not 6 months wasted. Those are 6 months of you learning a lot. And those lessons are going to take you into the next thing. Those lessons can also help you figure out what that next thing is. I think a lot of people, sit and dwell on well, what do I even want to be working on? What's my one true purpose? Like we talked about in our episode last week. And it's like, you're never going to find that unless you start working on something. So I think just reframing that in my brain of like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, I'm going to learn so much. And like the learnings are the process. And like, that's the productive work instead of just being like, well, it's wasted time. I just wasted 6 months of my life working on something that didn't end up coming to fruition. And I think that's the distinction. And then the third part of this is remembering that your brain is designed to protect your current identity, which I think is so interesting. And I think that this can really help us kind of like reframe that busy work. So we don't procrastinate because we're lazy. It's because our brains are trying to keep us psychologically safe. So when we are trying to focus on those tasks that are pushing our identity into new places or getting us out of our comfort zone, our brain doesn't like that. And our brain wants us to work on things that are lower risk or psychologically safe. That's why, maybe you're sitting in front of your computer trying to do something that's actually needle moving and you like all of a sudden want to go clean your apartment or you want to go like clean out your email inbox or you want to go make a new like to-do list system in your Notion calendar or something stupid like that. It's because all of those tasks are incredibly lower risk than doing the things that you know are going to move the needle, like pitching yourself, putting yourself out there, posting the video on social media. Those things are naturally less psychologically safe, so your brain doesn't like that.
It's interesting when you think of your brain as a mechanism that's designed to keep you safe because I think sometimes, especially in this kind of conversation and just for ambitious women in general, I feel like we end up at war with our brain a lot where there's a lot of like doubts or we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves or whatever it may be. But again, it's like your brain's job is to keep you safe. And so anything that threatens it, your brain is like, okay, hold on a second. And it's interesting because I think that when it comes to identity, we don't think of it as much. We think of it when it's like, okay, I'm going to cross the road. I should look left and right. And then you get that urge to look one more time. It's like, yeah, it's your brain like trying to keep you safe. But when it comes to our identity and what things threaten it, I feel like we don't really recognize that as much. I know that people tend to say that sometimes when you're working on, and I think a lot of this, well, side note, I think a lot of this goes back into understanding your own body and like being grounded in your own body to understand like how things feel. Because, like you were saying, let's say you're working on a task that's really needle moving, and then you get that urge to, I need to clean my apartment. Actually, that's more important. I'll go do that. Or I want to clean out my email inbox. It's like you have to pay attention to how that feels in your body. Because if you're feeling like an intuitive feeling of, this is just like, this is not right, that's one thing. But sometimes your body can kind of give you that same feeling of like, there's a task in front of you and you're like, I know that I should be doing this, but your body feels a little bit like tense, or sometimes like for me, it's like a buzzing kind of feeling, and it will make me want to go and do something else and not do that task. But it's because I know I've been able to gauge in my body what that feels like when I'm having one of these situations where I can tell this is what I need to be doing. My mind is just trying to keep me safe. And this typically happens for me before the things that have actually generated like the best results. Like before I did the style series, I felt this way where I was like, okay, I'm like, this feels so out of my comfort zone. I don't know how this is going to go. This feels like a risk to commit to doing this. And like, I don't know, I've never filmed in person with somebody else like that. I was like, I have no idea how this is going to go. But I was like, I know that this is like, it just feels a little tricky to me because it's a new level. It feels expansive, and my brain is trying to keep me safe and is not like, it knows that that's going to be out of my comfort zone. It knows that that's going to feel like a threat to my identity as it is. But I think those are those moments where if you can start to gauge that, once you hit that point, okay, it's just my brain trying to keep me safe. I'm going to force myself to push through. And on the other side of it is usually when you tend to make the most strides.
Yeah, it's incredibly anxiety inducing. And I actually
Mhm.
listened to a podcast episode about this yesterday. It was these two guys were talking about like things that have made them successful or like underrated, career advice that they wish they knew earlier. And they were talking about it in terms of public speaking, because I think when we talk about, stepping into a new identity and getting ourselves out of our comfort zone, public speaking is like the most relatable example ever. And he was saying, he was like, I just kind of knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to be a public speaker. And I got one opportunity to do it. And it was the scariest thing that I ever did. And naturally, it went okay. I felt good at the end because I like pushed myself out of my comfort zone, but still I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to do that again. Like, because that was so anxiety inducing. And he was like, a lot of people will have that feeling, or maybe they never even get to the first time trying public speaking, and they say, well, that was so anxiety inducing that I don't want to do that again. I'm going to like procrastinate the productive energy of like actually getting on stage in public speaking. So what they do is they do it in like way smaller increments over a way more like prolonged period of time. So instead of ripping the band-aid off and trying to get like as many public speaking opportunities that they can in a short period of time, maybe they start posting content on social media instead and post a video every couple of days, and they still feel awkward about it because they're like they still don't have that like public speaking skill yet. And then at the end of like an entire year long period of doing that, they've felt anxious all year because they still don't feel great about it. And they've built like way less of a skill on it. So what he was saying was like, sometimes you really do just need to totally rip the band-aid off and try to go at it as much as you can, do the focus work blocks as much as you can, work as hard as you can over a way shorter period of time to get your brain and your body to a point of like not feeling anxious about it. And I do think that that's how you get your point to like my identity has now matched the type of person and the type of work that I'm now trying to do.
When you start to feel a little bit of that resistance to the thing that, like, if you, how do I say this? If you feel really excited about something, excited about an idea, and then you start to feel a little bit of resistance, that resistance is not necessarily your body trying to say like, oh, you shouldn't do this, right? Like if you want to be a motivational speaker and then all of a sudden you're like, I feel this resistance to it or whatever, it's not your body trying to say you shouldn't be a motivational speaker. And it's not saying that, yeah, you should go and just post on, 3 times a week for an entire year instead. That's what feels safe to your brain. But again, it's like if you can get to that point of resistance and decide consciously, I'm going to push through, then you will get to that result faster. In this public speaking example, I'm sure if someone said, okay, I'm just going to try to get as many public speaking opportunities as I can. I'm going to go to my local like Toastmasters club, which is like a public speaking kind of, it's like a free public speaking club, basically. They have them in a bunch of cities if anyone's interested. But it's like, I'm going to go to Toastmasters. I'm going to try to, I don't know, maybe go to stand up, comedy and try to do something like that just to expose myself to these things in a shorter, faster sprint. Like you will get through that resistance and to the other side faster, but it is the harder route. Like it is the one that takes more conscious awareness of how your body feels and of how you're showing up, because you have to push through that resistance over and over. But if you're able to do that, you will get to a point in a much shorter time span than if you say, I'm going to go low and slow and yeah, like post a video every, 3 times a week for an entire year. Because yes, that might be getting you closer towards what you want, but is it actually just busy work at the end of the day? Is it just kind of keeping you feeling like you're doing something that's not quite what you actually want to be doing?
Absolutely. Okay. Now, for like the last part of this episode, we want you to leave this episode with a couple of very tangible, actionable, needle moving things that you can do to start being more productive in your own sense. This first one is to find your one identity building task every single day. I heard this on a podcast last year where she actually phrased it as like one super crazy like action step per day, or like whatever she said. But it was like every single day, literally at the top of her calendar planner for the day, she said, what is the one like crazy action step that I'm going to take today? And I love that. I think that that's such a good way to frame it. Like, what's the thing that's going to move the needle the most that I can do today? Not the thing that's going to take me a month to do that's a needle moving action step. What's the one thing that can move the needle today, whether that be posting the video on social media, or pitching yourself for an opportunity that's really cool, or whether that's, starting a YouTube channel, like I don't know, whatever you think, but every single day putting at the very top of your to-do list, what is the one thing that is actually going to move the needle? And if you did that for a month, can you imagine how like where you would be if you pitched yourself to a new opportunity every single day, or applied for a grant one day and posted a video the next day and wrote a LinkedIn post the following day, set up a networking chat the following day? If you did something like that for 30 days, can you imagine where you would be at the end of that?
Yeah, the question of like, what would my future self thank me for? Or even like, what would myself at the end of the week thank me for? Like, if you are in a position where maybe you don't even know who your future self is, like, you're like, I know I'm building towards something, but I don't even know. It's like, think about yourself at 5 p.m. on Friday and say, if I were sitting there, what would I look back and be like, yeah, I am really glad that I did that this week. I'm really glad I pushed through the resistance here and finished that task, or that I completed this or whatever. I think that now that has me thinking, I'm like, damn, I need to,
I
we're
know,
filming,
same.
we're filming like early in the morning right now. And I'm like, what is my, guess what could be on my to-do list today? I'm like, what am I, actually, I already did film a video that I'm really proud I filmed, but yeah, I'm like, damn, I need to think about what my future self would thank me for and get that on the calendar.
Yes. The second one here is to separate your to-do list into two columns. It's your busy work versus your needle moving work. And I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier on setting up better systems for your busy work, because naturally those are things that we have to do. And not even busy work in the sense of like you're cleaning your apartment and you're clearing your to-do list, but you're doing those day-to-day tasks that keep you afloat for where you are currently. How can we set up better systems around those so that we actually do have more time to focus on the productive needle moving things? And I feel like this is going to be a trial and error and everybody's different. I feel like I've gone through seasons of life where I'm like, okay, I am going to wake up first thing in the morning and I'm going to clear out all of the busy stuff so that my afternoon I can spend like with a clear mind, knowing that I have nothing else on my to-do list for the day, to just like do focused work blocks on the thing that's going to move the needle forward. But then I go through seasons of life where I'm like, I'm actually the most creative first thing in the morning. So let me wake up and first thing in the morning go into my office and, write for an hour, or just get into like the zone on the thing that I actually want to be working on. Because I do think too, when we're talking about like going after something new, we want to be doing it. We want to be working on it. And if we have like a clear mind to be able to give ourselves a couple of hours in the day to work on something that we actually want to do, can you imagine how productive you could actually be? But I think it is challenging, especially when you're juggling multiple things, to separate your to do list in your brain to be like, no, when I am focusing on those needle moving things, I'm only focused on those. I'm not thinking about my busy work. I'm not thinking about my day to day tasks.
Yeah, I also am more creative when I first like wake up in the morning and when I first sit down at my desk, but I'll typically, and I've talked about this before on the podcast and on my own socials, but when I make my to-do list in Notion, next to the task in parentheses, I write approximately how long I think that task will take me. So if I want to like go through my inbox, I'll be like, clear out inbox, parentheses, 20 minutes. And then I'll be like, I don't know, like write LinkedIn post, 20 minutes, whatever it may be. And then I'll try to group, like do a block of those like random admin tasks that are just like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, for like 1 hour to knock out multiple things on my to-do list, because that makes me feel like gives me that dopamine that then I feel like when I go into my focus work block to work on the like really productive tasks that are like the needle movers, that then I can like really lock in, similar to how you were saying, knowing, okay, all my admin stuff's taken care of. I just knocked it out in a 1 hour focus block. And now I can sit here for like 2 or 3 hours and work on content and scripting or editing or whatever it may be. And that's been really helpful for me. But yeah, I think it just comes down to what works best for you. And also too, one thing you kind of mentioned that I want to expand on is you were like, you've been through seasons where you do one thing and seasons where you do another. There is an element of seasonality to productivity. Like there are going to be seasons where you're like, oh, I'm more productive in the morning. Or last year, there was a season where I was so much more productive when I went to a coffee shop and worked. And so I would literally go to this one coffee shop and sit there for like 8 hours a day because I was getting so much done versus if I was at home. Now I'm kind of in like a mixture of that kind of season where I'm like, no, I'm really productive at home, but I like to also like get out of the house like maybe once a week and go to a coffee shop. So it just depends. So if you're trying to figure out what is going to help you now, yes, like use past seasons to inform, like, okay, I know I was really productive when I had this kind of routine or whatever, but also know that like as you grow and evolve as a person and just as like life changes, your business changes, job changes, just whatever it may be, you might find different things help you be more productive. So don't stay like attached to one way of doing things. Like let yourself evolve and find a system that works for you in this season of life.
I totally agree. And the last one that we have on this list as like the last tangible takeaway from this episode is to stop measuring your productive days and start measuring the courageous days where you're actually doing a needle moving task. And I actually really like the idea of like literally having a calendar and writing down one thing per day that you did that actually moved the needle? Like, could you imagine if you had a 30-day calendar hanging up on your wall and at the end of every single day you wrote down, what is the one thing that I did that actually moved the needle today? I feel like that would be really motivating to look back at the end of the week and be like, wow, on Monday I did that like really cool thing and that led to this opportunity. Or on Tuesday, I spent 3 hours working on setting up my YouTube channel. Or on Wednesday, I reached out to 10 people that I thought would be really cool to network with. I feel like that can be really motivating and can also help you like pull that momentum forward to do like bigger and bigger things as your life naturally grows and evolves.
Yeah, even if you are the kind of person who, like, if you use a habit tracker, I like love a habit tracker anytime I'm trying to like build any sort of new habit. And even doing that, showing up and doing something courageous or doing a needle moving task in itself, if you want to literally get a habit tracker, I have like a free one in my stand store, but there's like, free ones all over the internet. But you can literally print it out, track other habits, and make it a point to track what was the one like needle moving task that I did today. And I think that that's really motivating as well if it helps also to like habit stack it with something else. But that's really what's going to help you be truly productive and not just busy.
I totally agree. And with that, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We wanted this one to be like short and just kind of like tell you how we're feeling about productivity and then give you a couple of tangible takeaways to go have a really productive week if you're listening to this on Monday, right when it comes out. But like we said, we want to turn this into a series on why ambitious women struggle with different things. This one was on productivity, but let us know in Spotify what you're struggling with. And we would love to make these kind of dedicated episodes to talk through them and give you some takeaways to combat it. But with that, thanks for tuning into the podcast and until next week.